Pokemon Platinum is my favorite Pokemon game, yet after catching shiny Pokemon in virtually every other generation, I never found myself shiny hunting in Sinnoh. So let's see if my team of shiny Pokemon can surf through Sinnoh in a hardcore Nuzlocke. It wasn't long before I had made it to Professor Rowan's bag, and set my save point, and as the odds of finding a shiny are 1 in 8,192, me sitting in my chair for over 23 hours was expected. But in the end, it was so worth it as I found myself a shiny Chimchar. I called my very first teammate Venus and started on my journey. It wasn't too long before I had destroyed my rival Twig, and after destroying him, Venus was so excited that he evolved into a beautiful shiny Monferno. Now, even though he does have fighting typing, which is super effective against Roark's rock types, any crit would basically lose me the battle, and I was not gonna hunt for another starter. So I took the safe route and started looking for my next teammate. I found over 6,000 encounters before I was blessed with a beautiful shiny Shinx. I caught her and called her Saturn. With a small safety net, I felt comfortable taking on the first gym leader. As long as nothing went wrong, this was gonna be a fairly straightforward battle. I took Geodude out with a pair of Mach Punches, after which I was faced with Onix, who also felt a few more hits. Last but not least was Crenidos, and well, you can probably guess what happened here. I had earned my very first gym badge and was excited to keep on going. I soon found myself at Floroma Town, and after destroying a Galactic grunt, Saturn evolved into a shiny Luxio who looks awesome. I then defeated my next foe in Mars, because there can only be one solar system in Sinnoh, and that's my team of shinies. My next challenge was facing the second gym leader, Gardenia. I didn't really do much thinking when taking her on, so I went in underleveled expecting an easy win, but as I hit her Turtwig with a flame wheel, she was left on just a sliver of health, which was just enough to let it set up a reflect. Now, I still took out the little grass turtle basically unharmed, but she really wasn't the issue. Cherim was. Not only did she outspeed me with her magical leaf, but after reflect, I was only able to do a third of her health and damage per hit, which let her bring me all the way down to just 22 health before I was finally able to take it out. I was at super low health, but I was forced to stay in because of how fast Roserade was, so I just had to hope for the best here. Magical Leaf left me at just 8 health, but as Reflect had just worn off, a Flame Wheel was just enough to secure me my second gym badge. This was supposed to be the one easy gym battle in this run. I think it's time to start taking this more seriously, and what better way to do that than looking for my next Pokemon? After cycling down to Mount Coronet, I found the perfect spot to start hunting my next teammate. This was one of my longest shiny hunts ever, as I was in that cave for over 14,000 encounters. But thankfully, there was just one thing that kept me going throughout the countless hours I spent in there, and that was this video sponsor, which is this awesome game available on both mobile and PC. With an amazing storyline and spectacular graphics like these, it's easy to see why I played this game for the entire hunt. What's super cool about this game right now is that they recently introduced one of their biggest features ever, the Cursed City. Now, I'm usually pretty bored hunting for shiny Pokemon, but I was kept constantly entertained by the vast amount of content this feature brings to the game. Everybody starts their adventure in the same location, but you can choose your own way to travel through the city, taking on over 100 unique stages with epic double boss fights and a final battle in which you face Amius the Lunar Archon. But wait, there's more! Raid also has a special Christmas event going on, where you can win in-game and real-life prizes. Just head to raidxmas.com. Now, I'm gonna be hunting for a lot more shiny Pokemon in the near future, so I'll be playing Raid a lot. So make sure to join my clan Shiny Nightmare and let's be legends together. I mean, seriously, what are you waiting for? Scan my QR code or click my link in the description and you'll unlock 2 crazy champions for free, available only via my link. The first is Lightsworn, a very strong epic champion, and the second is Epic Juliana, who you unlock after reaching level 15. I'll see you guys in the Cursed City. I was in this cave for way over odds, and was honestly starting to believe I'd never see those sparkles again, but after over 14,000 encounters, I found myself a pretty pink Meditite, and although he wasn't gonna be extremely useful for beating Fantina, I happily accepted him into my team and called him Mars. Cyrus then tried intimidating me with his big words, but honestly, I can't read, so I just passed him and moved on to Hearthome City. I wonder what he he said though. I bet nothing too important. It's not like he's gonna cause me any problems later on. Either way, even though Mars wasn't gonna be very useful in this challenge, I was not up for another shiny hunt quite yet. So Fantina, here I come. I led with Saturn to face her Duskull, and after getting hit by a Shadow Sneak, I struck back with a Bite, and even though it wasn't quite enough to KO, she wasted her next turn healing, letting me get off the one hit right after. Haunter was up next, and I was once again outsped as I was hit with a Confuse Ray, which meant trouble. Thankfully though, I hit through confusion and knocked it out with a single bite. Last up was Fantina's Mismagius, and any misfortune at all would have been the end of me here. I was hit hard by a Shadow Ball, but I was still safely able to tank another one, unless I got hit by Confusion, which I thankfully didn't, and managed to get off my very first bite. Now, I still needed to avoid a crit, or... oh, I actually got a crit and knocked out Mismagius in one hit. Well, that's great. There goes my third gym badge. It wasn't long after this till Saturn crushed some hopeless wild routes and evolved into one of my favorite shinies of all time, Shiny Luxray. And it wasn't long till I got to test her out in battle as Twig came to me looking for another beating. As you can probably guess, this battle was a piece of cake. I started making my way towards Salacion Town, but was met with this odd piece of rocks beforehand, and that left me with a super exciting idea for this run, but I didn't think I was ready for it quite yet, so I kept on going. I made some final preparations and was confident that I was the most prepared I had been for a battle so far, and decided to challenge fighting gym leader Maylene. She led with a Meditite while I sent out Saturn. After getting hit with a fake out, I was able to KO Meditite with just one spark. Lucario was gonna be a much larger challenge though, so after getting hit by a Drain Punch, I decided to go for a Leer to lower his defense. I knew there was no chance Saturn was KOing Lucario, so on the next turn, I swapped out into my own prettier and stronger Meditite. And not only was I able to tank the first Drain Punch like it was nothing, but I somehow survived through a stab boosted Metal Claw, which I responded to with a high jump kick. And as Lucario's defense was halved by Leer, this was an easy one hit. The battle wasn't over though, as Machoke came out next and he meant business. I was forced to send Saturn back out, who was left at 31 health after a strength. I then hit back with a Spark, which did some good damage, but after getting left on red health from a Rock Tomb, it was time to switch out again. This time, sending out Venus. I went for a Flame Wheel to do some good damage, but managed to get a crit, finishing it off in one hit. That KO left me with my fourth gym badge. Even though I did succeed in getting the win there, that was still way too close for comfort, and I did not want to take any more risks in this shiny run. And so, I was left making my way to my next encounter, which was gonna be the coolest by far, at least for now. I made my way back to the pile of rocks I saw earlier, and after working some Nintendo magic, I ended up finding a Spiritomb. There was just one issue. It wasn't shiny. So, I spent the next 5,700 encounters soft resetting, until I found myself a sick shiny Spiritomb. This might actually be the best shiny sprite ever created, and I was so excited to add her to the team. I caught her and called her Uranus. Haha. It wasn't long before I got to check her out in battle, as Dawn had got herself in a sticky situation with a couple of Galactic grunts, and I was sure not disappointed at perhaps the coolest shiny sprite ever made. Uranus wasn't even half of the cool events that happened between the 4th and 5th gym, as right after this, Mars decided to evolve, and I've never even used a normal Medicham before, so I was super excited to test the shiny version out as soon as I could. But wait, there's more, as Venus evolved into a shiny Infernape right after. Okay, not to flex, but I think I might have built the best shiny team possible so far. Wait, why do I have two Meditites? I was excited to take on the next gym, but completely forgot about my next Twig battle. So hey, I guess it's time to try out my new teammates for the first time. First up was Staravia, and although I had the power of Luxray on my side, I still wasn't able to one-hit KO it with Spark, which was actually a big issue, as Staravia struck back with an Endeavor right after, leaving Saturn super low. It did thankfully go down on the next turn. There was no chance I could stay in against Ponyta, so I sent out Venus to make quick work of him, KOing him with a single close combat. With my lower defense, there was no way I could stay in against Prinplup, so So it was time for Uranus to do some heavy lifting. No way I just said that. I got hit by 2 bubble beams before I was finally able to get off a hypnosis, which I missed. But after surviving on just 4 health from the next hit, I finally managed to put it to sleep. I tried striking back with a Dream Eater, but it barely did any damage because of our massive level disparity. I knew I had to switch out again, so it was time to give Mars some screen time for the first time in this run. I hit Primplup with a high jump kick, which was an easy KO, and Roselia, well, she fell to just a couple confusions. Even with a slightly underleveled team, I was still able to destroy Twig completely underprepared. As I was on such a big winning streak, I made my way straight to Crasher Wake and took him on without hesitation. Gyarados was up first and also managed to hit first with a decently strong waterfall. I countered with a quite effective Spark, which actually ended up being a crit too, and there was no world in which a 8 times effective move wasn't gonna be a one-hit. Quagsire was my next challenge, so obviously I had to swap out here, and Mars is who I chose to go with. I got slowed down with a Mud Shot, but after hitting back with a high jump kick, it was clear to see who the winner of this matchup was gonna be. Force Palm was enough to finish off my foe. Floatzel was last up, so after tanking its crunch, I hit it with a high jump kick, which somehow ended up being yet another crit, being enough to finish it off in one move. Not only is my team super strong and shiny, but somehow super lucky too. After completing a couple brainless tasks, almost as brainless as the Psyducks, I sailed the 7 seas and found myself in Canalave City. Twig tried bothering me yet again, but I wasn't having any of it as I made quick work of all of his Pokemon. I was bloodthirsty at this point and wanted my next badge, so I took the first elevator up to Byron and faced him in battle. He leads with a Magneton, so I sent out Venus to cause some havoc. My Flame Wheel left the Magneton low, but even though this was gonna be an easy KO, it hit me with a Thunderbolt, which hit super hard, forcing me to swap out when Steelix came out next. I sent out Mars to tank his Earthquake, and it left him at less than half health, but his Citrus Berry was just enough to keep him afloat. I hit back with a high jump kick, and although it wasn't a one hit, it did a ton of damage, and for some reason he hit back with a Sandstorm? Interesting choice, Byron. I have no idea what that devious AI was up to, and I really didn't care, as I KO'd the Steelix with my next hit. Last, but actually definitely the very least, was Bastiodon, who fell to a single high jump kick, and that is the story of how I earned my 6th gym badge. After this, I had a bunch of mindless tasks to complete, such as destroying Team Galactic Saturn and Mars, because they were obviously trying to pretend to be shiny Pokemon like mine, and there's only room for one Saturn in Sinnoh. My journey then took me through the winter wonderlands of Route 216, all the way to Snow Point Gym, whose gym leader's name I forgot. Comment down below if you remember it, but what I do remember is that I absolutely destroyed her. I of course led with Venus and was able to take down Sneasel in just one Mach Punch. Piloswine felt a little trickier, but I eventually decided to hit it with a close combat, and I most certainly made the right choice. Next came Frostlass, who fell to a single flamethrower, and lastly Hurabumasnow, who also fell to a flamethrower. It was nice to finally have a small break from tough battles and earn my 7th gym badge without a struggle. And just as usual, I went from an easy battle to perhaps the hardest battle in the entire game, because next up I had to face Commander Cyrus, whose Sneasel could pose a real threat. Wait. Wrong Cyrus! I journeyed all the way through Mount Coronet, up Spear Pillar, and eventually into the Distortion World, where I found Cyrus at his true final form, and as much as I would like to say I was ready for this fight, that would be an absolute lie. So, well, let's just see what happened. First up was Houndoom, and this was literally the only easy KO I had, as I took it out in one close combat. Cyrus chose to send out Gyarados next. How perfect. This meant I was forced to switch out, and my only real choice here was Uranus. I've really gotta pronounce that better. I was able to tank a waterfall, but it still hit hard. On my next turn, I was hit with another waterfall, which brought me down pretty low. But afterwards, I missed my hypnosis. This is not good. A third waterfall from Gyarados left me at literally 2 health, and thanks to a miracle, I was able to finally put it to sleep. If I messed up now, it was over. So I sent out Saturn, and thankfully, Gyarados did not wake up. It didn't wake up on the next turn either, and this let me hit it with a quite effective Spark, which managed to finish it off with ease. My troubles were not over yet though, as next up was Weavile. Yet again, I was forced to swap out. I sent out Venus, who, after tanking a fake out, went for a Mach Punch on the Weavile, which should have been a one-hit, but he literally survived on just 1 health, which let it strike back with an Ice Punch. I was able to take it out on the next turn, but I was not happy being at such low health. And guess who was up next? A Flying type. Well, this is gonna go well. I swapped out into Saturn and easily tanked its Air Slash. It was, however, faster than me and hit me with a Cross Poison, and my Spark I used in retaliation wasn't even close to KOing. It went for yet another Cross Poison, but after healing up with a Citrus Berry, I was able to take it out with a Spark. Now, it was looking pretty good at this point, but I could not afford to swap out yet, so I had to put my everything into a Spark. But the Honchkrow struck first with a Night Slash, bringing me down to just 3 health. Holy fuck. I have no idea how I survived that, but I'm glad I did, as I hit back with a Spark doing amazing damage on the Honchkrow. Honchkrow's next hit was obviously gonna KO, so all I could think of doing at this point was swapping out again into Venus. Honchkrow thankfully chose to go for a Heat Wave, which barely scratched Venus. This time, I was able to outspeed and finish off Cyrus's final Pokemon with a Flamethrower. That was way too close for comfort. Even though I won that battle, the combined health of my 2 lowest Pokemon was literally 5, and that's not okay. We're not even at the Elite Four yet. I knew I needed a new teammate, but where could I possibly find one? Well, right here. I set my save point right in front of Giratina and started my next shiny hunt. I had to soft reset over 9,000 times before I finally saw a glimmer of those elusive shiny sparkles and found myself a shiny Giratina. Not only is Giratina one of my favorite Pokemon ever, it is also one of the best ever made, so I made sure to waste no time and add this beautiful shiny beast, who I call Jupiter, to the team. I then ironically made my way to Sunyshore City in the dark, and quickly found myself at the final gym, ready to take on Volkner with my shiny demon from the Distortion world. Jolteon struck first with an Iron Tail, but that did barely any damage, and I struck back with a Shadow Force, leaving the Jolteon at just a sliver of health. It wasn't long before I had knocked it out. Luxray was up next, and as it wasn't even a shiny, it was obvious to see it wasn't gonna be a very hard fight, as even after Intimidate, Shadow Force did nearly half its health. Wait, it nearly killed me with a Crunch. What? Let's just ignore that. I sent out Venus next to do some serious damage and knocked out the Luxray with a Flamethrower. Volkner sent out Electivire to try and strike some fear in me, and it actually worked out, because after hitting it with a Flamethrower and it healing back up, Thunder Punch left Venus at just 21 health, and I was forced to switch out yet again. After sending in Mars, who tanked 2 Thunder Punches surprisingly well, I hit back with a high jump kick and knocked the thundery beast out. Raichu was my last foe, and I decided to send out Saturn to tank an electric move, and my plan worked out perfectly. I got hit by a special attack boosted Focus Blast, which was actually super scary, and even though I managed to hit a powerful Crunch afterwards, it was looking like I might lose this battle, as I had to swap out into Uranus. He thankfully went for another Focus Blast, which obviously Uranus was immune to. So after Raichu missed the next charge beam, I hit back with a Dark Pulse and earned myself the 8th and final gym badge. Taking on the Elite Four is never an easy task, so I wanted to make sure I was fully prepared. I made my way back to Snowpoint City and quickly found myself in a patch of grass, where I would inevitably spend the next 4,500 encounters brainlessly strolling around, until I eventually found myself a shiny Snorunt, and luckily it was female. I caught her and called her Neptune. I of course couldn't take a small little Snorunt to the Elite Four with me, no matter how cute she looks, so I went and found myself a Dawnstone and used it to evolve myself a shiny Frostlass. With a team full of shiny Pokemon ready to go, I made my way to the Pokemon League, where I had one final challenge to face before the Elite Four, which was my rival Twig. He leads with a Staraptor, so I sent out the perfect counter in Saturn. Or so I thought, because he hit me with a U-turn and switched right into a Snorlax who tanked my Spark like it was nothing. His Earthquake was gonna be deadly, but I still had to send out Venus to take him on. But luckily, I was able to survive on just 23 health. On the next turn, I outsped him and took him out with a super effective stab boosted close combat. The Raptor came back for more, so I decided to give him another shot with Saturn, who tanked a Steel Wing with ease. This time, Staraptor stayed in battle and hit me with a close combat, but even though it left me at just 28 health, the defense drop was enough to let me finish it off in a single spark. Twig sent out Heracross to face me, so I swapped out into Jupiter to completely avoid a close combat. I chose to go for a super effective fly, and there was no universe in which that wasn't a one-hit. Empoleon came out right after, and his typing made this a tough matchup for Jupiter, so I switched out into Mars, who unfortunately was hit by a super effective Shadow Claw, but he still tanked it well. My high jump kick in return was enough to earn me the KO. Roserade made me swap back out into Jupiter, and once again, Fly came to the rescue, as it knocked out Roserade in one hit. Now, I really wasn't worried about his Rapidash, who was his last Pokemon, because let's be honest, how would a bounce ever hurt a damn Giratina? Shadow Force was enough to earn me the one hit and help me take out Twig for the last time, but honestly, we all saw that coming. The real challenge lies ahead in the Elite Four, and that's exactly where I'm headed to next. Aaron was quite literally the one and only easy battle I had in the Pokemon League. I sent out Venus and completely wiped out his Yanmega with a flamethrower. One hit was not enough to take out the Drapion though, at least yet, so I set up a Calm Mind, after which this battle was a walk in the park. Heracross fell to just one flamethrower, and so did his Vespiquen, and Scizor, he was done for. Now, like I said, this was literally the only easy battle I would have in the league, as Bertha did not go easy on me. I led with Jupiter and hit her Whiscash with an Ominous Wind, to which she counters with an Earth Power, which was pretty weak. While she took the time to set up a Sandstorm, I hit her with a Shadow Force and took her out. I was not gonna be able to face Gliscor like this, so I sent out Neptune, who was forced to tank an Earthquake, but thankfully did a pretty good job at it. I struck back with a super effective Ice Beam, and it was more than enough to earn me the KO. But even though she didn't get to strike back, the Raging Sandstorm was doing increasingly more and more damage, and I started to get worried. I had no choice but to stay in for the next turn though, and I hit Golem with an Ice Beam, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to kill, and it hit me back with an Earthquake, which I somehow lived through at 7 health. But the true blessing was that the Sandstorm subsided right then and there, letting me survive another turn. I seized my chance to finish the Golem off with an Ice Beam. I couldn't face a Rhyperior with just 7 health, so I swapped out into Jupiter to tank her Earthquake. As she has such a high physical defense, I had to hit her with an Earth Power, which was nearly enough to KO in one hit. I was fortunately able to survive yet another hit from Rhyperior, and this let me go for one last Earth Power and take it out. Last but definitely not least was Hippowdon, and I chose to switch out to Mars here, which seemed to be the perfect choice as she went for a crunch. I then hit her with a high jump kick, dealing over half her health, and even though she hit back with an Earthquake, I lived with enough health to outlive the Sandstorm and finish this battle off with one last high jump kick, which thankfully didn't miss. 2 done, 2 to go. My third Elite Four battle was against the Fire-type leader, Flint. His first choice was Houndoom, while I went with Jupiter. Earth Power was unfortunately not enough to KO, and he got to set up Sunny Day, but that wasn't too bad as I took him out with a couple of Dragon Claws. Next up came Flareon, and I tried for another Dragon Claw, which did a surprisingly large amount of damage. I got hit back by a Will-O-Wisp, which did cut my attack in half, but as I hit back with an Earth Power, it was an easy KO. Infernape was a similar story. It didn't manage to do much with its Earthquake, while my Earth Power was enough to KO it in one hit. Granted, it was a crit. Rapidash came out next, setting up Sunny Day again, and I wanted to try my luck hitting it with an Earth Power, but it wasn't quite enough to KO. For some reason, I forgot he would full restore, so I hit him with a pretty weak Dragon Claw and left myself in a bad spot, and was forced to send out Venus here. Even though I was at full health, Rapidash's Flare Blitz ended up being a crit, and somehow, a weak hit left me at just 16 health. I was able to take it out with a close combat on the next turn, but this battle was far from over as there was still a Magmortar to face. I sent out Saturn right away, and to my relief, he went for a Thunderbolt, which I tanked like nothing. His Flamethrower was a different story though, and hits hard, but I got super lucky here as my Spark in return ended up paralyzing him. But to be fair, he managed to burn me too. Even though I was able to outspeed him, I was not in a position to KO with halved attack, so I sent out Mars to finish the job. And after a high jump kick, I was finally able to end this long and intense battle. Without hitting the brakes, I took on Lucian, the final Elite Four member. While he led with Mr. Mime, I sent out Jupiter and hit him with a massive Dragon Claw, and for some reason, he went for a Light Screen instead of Reflect. Look, I have no idea why, but that left me in an easy position to KO him with a couple more hits. Espeon must have been the 10th evolution I was fighting so far, and I wanted to test out my Shadow Force against it, and it ended up being a one-shot. Bronzong was a different story. As I was no longer able to hit it with super effective shots with Jupiter, I sent out Venus, and he put an end to the battle in a single hit. Alakazam would outspeed nearly any Pokemon ever, so I needed some more bulk on the field, and Jupiter was just right for that. After tanking 2 rounds of Psychic, I charged up a Shadow Force, and as it hit, I quickly realized it was gonna be a one-shot, and this left me facing just one more Pokemon. And Gallade, well, I was able to outspeed it, and as I hit it with my Shadow Force, I felt a moment of relief as I saw it got knocked out. I had made it to the champion, and somehow with 0 deaths, and I wish it could have stayed that way. But fighting Cynthia, I knew that was never gonna happen. Let's see, was I able to become the champion of Sinnoh? Cynthia leads with a non-shiny Spiritomb, so I decided to send out Jupiter. I hit her with a Dragon Claw, to which she retaliated with a Shadow Ball. I realized that another Dragon Claw was not gonna KO, so I went for a Shadow Force on my next turn, and that was just enough to finish it off. Garchomp, however, was a different story. I got hit by a Dragon Rush, which literally not only brought me down to 14 health, but also made me flinch. This basically rendered Jupiter useless and forced me to send out Mars as a sacrifice. It wasn't long before he was knocked out with a Flamethrower. Thanks for everything, Mars. You did great. This, however, let me safely send in Neptune, and as I have a stab boosted Ice Beam in my arsenal, this was an easy KO. Lucario, however, wasn't. Even though I was able to go first, my moveset was pretty useless here, so even though I got off an Ice Beam, it barely did any damage, and I fell to a Stone Edge right after. Nice try, Neptune. Venus was not having any of it though, so I went for a Flamethrower and absolutely decimated the Lucario. Milotic would have made quick work of Venus, so I had to swap out, and I chose to send in Uranus. She lived through a Surf with relative ease, and this gave me just one chance to try going for a Hypnosis, as I lived through my next hit on just 4 health. But fate was not on my side today, as I once again missed my Hypnosis, and that was the end of the road for Uranus. Oh my god. How do I keep doing this? I knew I needed my revenge on Milotic, so I sent out Saturn and went for a Spark, which did a truckload of damage, but wasn't quite enough to KO. Luckily though, Milotic's Mirror Coat failed, and this let me finish her off with a few more Sparks. Roserade posed quite a threat to Saturn, so I used this opportunity to send out Venus. Even though I was forced to tank a Sludge Bomb, I didn't really mind, as I knew my next Flamethrower was more than enough to finish the Roserade off. I also went for a Flamethrower against Cynthia's Togekiss, but it wasn't enough to earn me the knockout, out, and unfortunately, after all this time, it was the end of the road for Venus. You did great, pal. I was down to my last 2 Pokemon, but at this point, it didn't really matter, as even though Togekiss went first, his Aura Sphere basically only scratched Saturn, and my Spark in return left him at just 1 health. It wasn't long before Togekiss fell to a flurry of sparks, and that's how I became champion of Sinnoh. This video took me so long to make, so make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and please make sure to support the channel by clicking on the QR code, downloading Raid Shadow Legends, and joining my clan Shiny Nightmare. I'll see you guys in the Cursed City.